Hey, what's up there, peeps? How's it going? Well, I'm done with my day at work. It's a little echoey in here. But I decided to make a couple videos, and the first one was just about weed. I don't know why, but I thought about talking about it. It was a topic that was on my mind. But this one is the one I originally should have made and intended to make, which is really hard to define, but spiritual emergency would be the best term that I could think of. And what does that exactly mean? Now, the term emergency is alarmist, so let's define it. It's emergent. Something emergent is something that comes out all of a sudden, or define it however you like. It's something that's emerging. And emergency is something, in my opinion, that emerges that demands your immediate attention. So that could be anything, right? That could be somebody getting hurt. That could be an emergency. You getting hurt, or losing your house, or having some issue you have to attend to. Those would all be emergencies. But a spiritual emergency is something that's not as easily defined, and I think lacks sufficient attention, let's just say. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're having an episode where something is needs to be completely addressed right at the moment, but rather an awareness. One might call it an epiphany or an apocalypse even, which is an unveiling or an awareness, awakening. I'm using caution not to use certain terms. I want to make it clear, when I talk about spirituality, I want to avoid using any terminology that's biblical, or even, Hindu, or, Islam, Christian, any form of dogmatic religion. But this also includes Buddhism. I'm careful not to overuse the word satori, or, especially not the word enlightenment. I can't stand that, because I feel like it just puts a bad taste in people's mouth. They don't understand what these terms mean, and most people don't want to take the time to learn them. So what I believe we need is a more universal Western style way to address these topics. Now, I'm not going to get all Alan Watts on you and try to redefine what it means to be Zen or Buddhist or anything else. My intention is just to talk about the terms in very simple terms, very simple expressions. I'm not going to use terms that you don't know, like Satori, or even though it could be, there's so many different degrees of how people take these words, but an awakening of some sort, right? Call it an epiphany. I think that's a great way to put it in the Western term. You have an epiphany about something, but it comes through intuition. Now, when you have a strong epiphany about life, about what exists in this universe, why we're here, and it comes through the intuitive process. Now, this could be through just sitting quietly. It could be through intense concentration and focus. It could be through prayer. It could be through meditation. It could be through psychedelics. But whatever it is, if you put the intention behind trying to understand why you're here, then you will get answers that you may not expect. Now, it's not guaranteed for everyone. There are some people who say they've been trying forever to get any type of intuitive information, and maybe it's not for everyone, but most people definitely have an experience when they put in the effort that they would only describe as more real than this reality. And once you've had it, there's no turning back. There's no pretending it didn't happen. There's no denying it. You can forget about it for a while. You still have to live your life. You still have to work a job. But to pretend that that experience wasn't real is not something that's even considered by the person. And I know this because I am a person who's had an experience like this. Several, in fact. But I'm still these are such intense personal experiences that I have no intention of trying to convince anyone of them or what they mean or what they were. But eventually I will be putting them all into a consolidated form to try to share. Maybe write a book about it or make a longer video essay, but I need to write these things down. But for now, I just want to say, if you've had a very strong mystical experience, it can be more real than this reality. Now, I'm not new to this. In a sense, I remember about 10, 12 years ago, I was practicing a lot of lucid dreaming. I was obsessed with it for a while. And I gave up because I thought, I'm interfering with my brain doing what it needs to do while I sleep. In other words, I'd rather get the weird dreams and the information from that than to stand there like an idiot in my dream and be like, okay, I can manifest weed on a table or I can fly. Okay, flying's fun, but what are you know? And for anybody who's never lucid dreamed, they might think, what are you, crazy? That'd be a blast. And it is, but it takes effort and focus, and I eventually moved on. But since I was young, I've been fascinated with alternative knowledge, spiritual studies, things like this, different biblical texts. I read Revelation when I was like 15. I wanted to know all about, different prophecies and what might happen in my lifetime. And the reason why is because my entire life I've always felt like there was something I needed to do or needed to know. And it was only through intention and seeking that I found that and understood what it was. It was, of course, the basics do the work, but it was in such a concrete form that I couldn't deny it. So anybody who's had that experience will know where I'm coming from. And it makes you wonder why we are so blinded to our true nature as these truly spiritual beings. We are so much more than our bodies, and we still identify with the body. But I also think that the anti-materialism goes a little too far in negating the body. In other words, I don't care. It's just a shell. And this is guilty within the spiritual community as well as religions. People who think, well, I can do whatever I want with the body or destroy the earth because I'm going to go to heaven or I'm going to go to a better place and we're all going to evolve together. The message I've always got is that we need to do the work while we're here. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of the world, but we can't be such tightwads and, constantly overprotective of ourselves. We have to remember to help the world, remember to help others. And that can be harder than it seems at times. And so I've done a lot of thinking about this, but haven't come to a lot of conclusions about, the best approach to expressing and sharing some of these truths that I've had personally without sounding like a quack. But then I listen to other people who do it so much better than I do. Folks who have had the same experience. It happens across all boundaries, all religions. I might have mentioned this previously in a video, but somebody yesterday I heard they said, if two theologians get together, they argue. When two mystics get together, they agree. And I thought that's a perfect way to put it, because the mystic needs not to prove anything. They just have the archetypes, the understanding that there's something deeper. I'm not saying anyone in particular is a mystic or I'm a mystic. I'm just a seeker. And I know fellow seekers have the same experience. And you start to understand the universe through steps and stages. And when you get to a certain level, the only thing you can do is just shut up about it, because you can't share it with anyone else. No matter how hard I've tried, I sound basically like a lunatic if I share my true feelings about these things. The way that we are affected by everything around us, the planets, basically it's all real kind of attitude, magic, astrology. I've always known that there's little bits and pieces to it. It's just that modern humans have really lost touch with what matters. But certain humans really can tap into that stream because we're not single entities. We are a collective. And we've been denying that for a really long time. So those are my thoughts. But I can only say so much. My own experiences I'm not going to go into, but if you've had any personal experiences with, the divine, the Godhead, it's feel free to share them and leave them so we can all, learn from each other, because there are certain things that I'm at a loss for words to even talk about, and this is one of them. But having a profound experience, like I would call it a Jungian experience, very archetypal, very synchronistic, and very evidential. There's no denying it, kind of thing. Sometimes I just don't know what to think. Most of the time, I don't know what to think. But we get these little glimpses of something deeper. And we can turn away, or we can acknowledge it. As the air compressor turns on. I guess I should unplug that. That's enough for today. I guess I'm going to head home pretty soon. And I better finish up some work here first. But I hope you all have a fantastic day. That's all I can say. Be well now. Take care of each other. I know it's hard to remember that we are all one being in a way. As I was saying earlier, even though we can acknowledge that we all are in this together, it doesn't mean that we should acknowledge or not acknowledge our own uniqueness. It seems like a lot of people want to kind of give up on who they are because it's too much work. And I think that's kind of dangerous too. In other words, it's a lot of spiritual bypassing. Like, oh, I believe this and that, and none of this matters. No, the work matters. For me, my family, my wife, my 3 boys, a home, these are the things that matter to me. And I need to work to preserve those things. And nothing else really matters except just being grateful, being kind, trying to help others, service to each other as much as possible. So I'm going to try to do the best I can and hope my neighbors do as well. Talk to you next time. Be well.